This is our crew right here. The radioman, a fellow by the name of O'Neill, Scuda, the pilot, and myself.
It's been more than 3/4 of a century, but memories of early 1943 come easily for John Busalis.
I've been very flattered a couple of times when I asked people to pick it out. They picked me out as a pilot.
He was a 23-year-old Navy radio man and a gunner in World War II, stationed aboard the USS Sewanee in the middle of the South Pacific. On February 27th, Busalis and his crewmates began what was supposed to be a routine anti-sub patrol. They were about 2 hours into the flight when their engine gave out.
The pilot came on the intercom that we were going to go down. We landed at sea. A lot of people have the impression that landing on water is kind of a soft landing. However, this is not true. It's like hitting a brick wall.
Uninjured by the hard landing, it took less than a minute for Busalis and pilot B.J. Scuda to get out of the sinking plane. They quickly deployed a life raft and grabbed an emergency survival kit.
We had a hard time getting the radioman done because a Navy man couldn't swim. He was reluctant to jump in the water, but he knew that jumping in the water was the best of the two options that he had.
In the distance, they could see an island, so they started paddling. Progress was slow, and there was no sign of anybody coming to rescue them.
Trying to help things along, the pilot and I got into the water and tried to push the raft. And that was all well and good until we saw some shark dorsals, and we got back in the raft in a quick hurry.
After 4 days of paddling and nearly getting pulled back out into the open sea, the three men landed on the rocky coast of Erromango, a remote island about 30 miles long and 19 miles wide, more than 1,000 miles from the east coast of Australia. They had 7 ounces of drinking water left.
A short ways back from the shoreline, there was this lava rock, and there was some water in that didn't have the salt water in it. We got some of that, and we just rested. We just plopped down and regained our strength before we started walking.
After days of sun and saltwater exposure, Busalis' feet were swollen and raw.
The shoes here, where I had to cut them, my feet were so swollen.
The men explored what they could, avoiding sharp rocks and coral snakes. They had run out of food on the life raft.
March the 4th, that's Thursday, in cave, treating our wounds and resting up. Began to get hungry.
Busalis reads from a report he wrote in 1943.
Half-mile inland, we find oranges, limes, papaya, all very nourishing.
After 4 days of wandering, Busalis and his crewmates spotted an island native out looking for a lost pig. He took them back to his village, where they were fed chicken stew and given more fruit, including pineapple he'll never forget.
That pineapple vine ripened was the sweetest pineapple, the most tasty pineapple I'd ever eaten or have eaten since.
A day later, the natives led Busalis and the 2 others to the other side of the island, where an Australian man named S.O. Martin had a cattle ranch and a small house.
We got a little bit disturbed. When he first saw us, he started to laugh. It kind of bothered us a little bit, but then he told us that his hobby was collecting American airmen because there was others that had cracked up there before we did.
Busalis, Scuda, and O'Neill spent the next 25 days recovering at the ranch. Busalis came down with malaria, which the rancher was able to treat. He spent his 24th birthday on the island, reading books and riding horses.
If it wasn't for that native being there, there would have been hardship. There's no doubt about it. But we had all the comforts of home.
Soon, a supply boat stopped by the island and later notified a radio operator on a nearby island that there were Navy airmen stranded there.
The island that you went to get picked up was?
Tanna.
Tanna, and that is just south of there a little bit. Is that correct?
Yeah.
A couple of days later, Busalis, Scuda, and O'Neill were picked up by seaplanes and returned to their carrier, 1 month after they had disappeared into the South Pacific. The experience changed Busalis.
I don't let things bother me like I used to before, you know? There's just too many good people without worrying about the bad ones. And that helped me in that way. I didn't get all real uptight like I used to.
After the war, Busalis returned home to Minnesota and eventually moved to Nebraska, arriving in Lincoln in 1961. He opened a well-known restaurant and golf club and later turned the business over to his son George. His sister-in-law, Helen Busalis, was Lincoln's mayor from 1975 to 1983. John Busalis celebrated his 100th birthday in 2019. He's had some time to reflect.
There were a lot of heroes back in that time,
A
and
lot of heroes.
he was one of them.
I don't know about that.
He doesn't talk much about his experience in 1943. He knows many others had it much worse than he did. But he did learn a valuable lesson about the human spirit.
The will to survive is very strong. Very strong.